Welcome to the Adoptee Thoughts podcast. I am your host, Melissa Guida-Richards, an author, adoptee, and mom. Each week, we will delve into the nuances of adoption, as well as tips for how to bring up difficult discussions in your adoptive family. And most importantly, we will not shy away from tough topics. So thanks for joining me today, and let's jump into your weekly dose of Adoptee Thoughts. Okay, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, good afternoon. I'm Alessia, and I'm an adoptee from the US. I was born in Georgia in the 1990 and adopted to an Italian family in Italy. So I grew up there on the northern side, northern west side actually. And I was able to study art from high school to my bachelor, and then I moved to US to get my master, and then I moved back because I was pretty shocked, I think. But yeah, no, yeah, this is all I can say. Mine wasn't a close. I mean, it was a closed adoption, but I had all the documents, and I didn't want to search for a long time, but now I searched. I found my birth family, and it's complicated, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, yes. It tends to be complicated, right? I just found my birth mother and half siblings over the past year, and it's been an intense ride for sure.
Yeah,
Um, I find it so interesting that you were adopted from the United States, and
it's
because a lot of the
uncommon.
times you're yes. So you're constantly. I was adopted from Colombia. A lot of the people I've interviewed were adopted from Guatemala. Uh, Ethiopia, just other countries, and then usually they're coming into the US. Or so can you tell me a little bit about the experience growing up in Italy as a TRA?
Yeah, so I wasn't the only one. It was actually a group of adoption between the beginning of the 1989 up to the 1993, at least my group of adoption, and then there
Mhm.
were more, I think, until the 1996 at least, and then things changed because of the egg convention and the right of the child. So yeah, but they're mostly black ma- babies, male babies.
Mhm.
We are very few females. I guess you all imagine why. Being the US, I don't have to explain you. Yeah, but about my childhood, I had, I think, I mean, a good one. I was raised close to Turin, which is the northern western side, as I said already. But I was raised in a small town.
Mhm.
It was pretty okay, but I mean, I come to know about me being adopted very like quickly since kindergarten.
Mhm.
Also because my parents always told me, but also mostly because like it was very visible. I was the only black
Yeah.
kid from kindergarten up to university, and still now that I work. So um, that that has always been kind of a struggle. I wasn't
Mhm.
speaking English. I didn't maintain the language until I moved to US, thanks to a school exchange when I was in high
Okay.
school. And in that, I think at that point, I don't know, something changed. I suddenly realized I was able to separate words, make meaning of it, and then I try to maintain it, and
Mhm.
just listen, because like we listen to you guys, like America. I mean, with TV shows, film, movie, like everything is about America. Italy is, especially, is like, oh, America is so cool. No? So for a long time. it was this like, I won my prom, like I won this, I won that. And then when I after my
Yeah.
after my bachelor, I was able to get my passport and move to the US and get a little bit of that US experience. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's where it changed for me, at least.
How was it being in the United States, knowing that you could have grown up here?
At first, it was super cool. At first, it was like, that's my moment. I'm finally gonna live the life that I didn't live. And then it was very difficult because at first no one was believing me, especially like when I got to get like my papers, the social security and all the stuff. At first it was like, haha, and when were you adopted? And I was like, yeah, I was 4 months.
Yeah.
So you never like came here back and forth, like where did your parents live? And I was like, no, my parents are still in Italy, like they don't even speak English. I'm the only one. And yeah, so at first it was shocking for sure. A long for a long time, I think 2 months top. I think I was like just going to I think I went 2 times, not more than that, because my papers were in order, but it was challenging just not to be believing. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then it was weird because I was kind of exotic to the black community.
Mm.
I was like, oh, Italy, like, wow, my God. So, do you know how to cook? And I was like, yes, but I don't like it. Um, yeah, those sort of things. But no, I think I managed, I managed to, I don't know, to simply live a life. I went to school. I had my routine. But at a certain point, I mean, I was kind of escaping Italy because of like the way Black Italians were perceived and are perceived. So it was always like, oh, so where are you
Hmm.
from? And I didn't want to answer that question because it was troubling for me, just to say I wasn't like there, because there are Afro Italians who are born here or like grew up here, and but they have like a strong African connection, and then there are
Hmm.
adoptees like me, and we don't have the same like a black family and sort of all that sort of things. So it was challenging at first, and then I decided to move back because I was missing home, and I felt more
Yeah.
Italian than American.
Yeah, yeah. You definitely, well, growing up in one culture, it's kind of hard to leave that. Um,
Yeah.
I'm nervous to like go back to Colombia because my husband's actually half Colombian and his
Oh,
mom's back there now. So like we're thinking about taking a trip, but like part of me wants to go, and then the other part is just like I don't know how I'm gonna be able to handle it. That culture shock. I'm
yeah.
definitely nervous. So it's nice knowing about your experience with coming back to your birth country and seeing how you handled it. I'm interested to know more about growing up in Italy as a Black adoptee and that culture. How your parents handled discussions about race, if they talked to you about it growing up, if they kind of prepared you for um, possible racism, microaggressions. Did those types of conversations happen with your family?
Yeah, no. So when I was adopted, I mean, at that time in Italy, they weren't the first adoption because international adoption has been going for a long time, but they were, and also like private agency were born around like the beginning of the 80s. So they were like still, I think, swinging with it. But mostly there wasn't a lot of education for parents. So my parents basically, I mean, they told me I was adopted. They told me from where I was adopted, and we were watching Robinsons, and we were like following the one black Italian athlete doing like Olympic games. That was happening, but other than that, I had to do basically all on my own. But I'm not the only one. This is actually a conversation that is happening in Italy a lot because we
Mm-hmm.
adoptees are coming to age. Like there are even more age. I'm 30, and there are adoptees older than me. So we are facing that, like the way our parents raised us. A lot of us
Mm-hmm.
didn't got that support. It's very rare. My parents, I think, did one thing that helped, which was keeping a part of our group of adoptees from US together, like in Piedmont. So we were actually meeting, and but it was like a couple, twice or three times top at the year. So it
Mm.
was that kind of like meeting. Oh yeah, they're like me, and then like back to life. So it
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but it was good. At least having someone that's like you. I actually,
Definitely.
yeah, when I went to US, I didn't find what I was looking for, which was invisibility. Um, and I wasn't looking for my roots. I just wanted to live my culture, and I ended up wanting to connect with that group even more because they were the only one that could understand what I was feeling. But then also life makes it like we adoptees, everyone is different. Everyone has his own story. Like I feel you when you say like, oh, I'm afraid of like going back to Colombia. Um, I know. I think I cried all the time, like the 14, 13 hours top, like straight. And I wanted to move back, so I understand. It's also like weird to go back to a country and have people just looking at you and
Mm.
like thinking that they know, and then you're like, no, you don't, and they're like, oh, why are you weird?
Mm-hmm.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean. Like, whenever other people see me, they see me for like my appearance on the outward,
Yeah,
like outward appearance, and they see a Latina, and they expect me to have certain mannerisms, certain speech patterns, and they expect me to speak Spanish. And then on the inside, I was raised by an Italian American and Portuguese American parents that didn't teach me any of that. So I'm pretty whitewashed with my upbringing, and it can shock people, and then they get really awkward about it because they're like, "Why don't you speak Spanish?" or "Why don't you do these things?" I'm just like, "Because I don't know. I'm
yeah,
learning now as an adult, but that's not what I was raised in." And yeah, so I'm glad that you're sharing that with us, and can
yeah.
you tell me a little bit more about the culture shock about being in America for school? What did you expect, kind of, when you came here, and how was it different?
Yeah, no, I think the thing that shocked me the most was the fact that it wasn't different from the movies. Um, like it was like watching a movies and a movie and be in it. And I didn't want to be in a movie. I wanted to live a like real life. Like I remember my first job was in a shoe shop, and this the shop owner, she had two sons, and they were like the instant they realized that I was from Italy, it was like everything changed for them, and they were like, oh. we need to like, I don't know, but surprisers. They were like doing like push-ups, and they were like, oh, you need to choose between us. And I was like, I'm engaged. Like, and I was like, where is the ring? And I'm like, I don't have the ring. I left it in Italy. So like that sort of things. Or things like, oh, Italians, they're black, like Sicilians, they're black. And I was like, I actually didn't quite get how and why they were saying that until this summer. I don't know what, there are those things that you don't realize until you actually see them. Like
Mm-hmm.
my boyfriend, he's white, half Sicilian, half from Puglia, and like all his like part of his family is in Sicily. So we are actually here now, and he's living in Turin with me. So no much sun. We go to the sea, and it's like white. But his mom and like her and his aunts, they're all, and cousins, they're like super tan, like super, like they have the my
Mm.
color. And was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's why, like, so that's how
Yeah.
I got that feeling. Like now I get what happened like 4 years ago, where everybody was like, oh yeah, they Sicilian, they're black. uh, but yeah, no, it was kind of fun when I lived in Little Italy. I actually stayed in Chicago for my bachelor. I mean, for my master. So I lived in Little Italy, and it was quite funny to meet Italian Americans and like say, "Oh, I'm Italian too," and I'm like, "Oh, really?" And then they were like, "Oh, so do you speak Italian?" I was like, "Yes." Do you speak Italian? And they were like, No, but I'm 100% Italian. I'm like, no, I'm not. But I was raised. I know how to cook. That's where
Yeah.
it comes to Andy. Like, yeah, that lasagna.
Italian
Yeah,
Americans are funny. Like they're super big on the culture and like being proud. Like I swear, like my family has like Italian flags everywhere, and they're like, when the soccer games come on, they're like, yeah, like we gotta
yeah,
watch it and this and that. And then it's just so funny to me because it's just like, okay, like calm down. Like, but yeah, and then having like real Italians, when I would meet other kids in school, my dad was super Italian. Like that was his first language. He grew up there most of his life. And then coming here, like other Italians, they really don't have the upbringing. They don't speak the language like traditional immigrants and Italians from Italy do. And it's funny to see how proud they are, but also how separated they are from like cultural things like that. So I just find that interesting what people are so passionate about.
yeah.
Um
It is. I also wrote a
but
thesis.
yeah,
Sorry, I also wrote a thesis
you
about.
what?
I mean, I remember your question, and I also wrote a thesis about my experience being black and Italian um,
Mhm.
in US, uh, and it ended up, I mean, being titled. I titled it "Black but Italian," and mostly because it was um, not just black, but more than Italian. And what
Yeah.
I wasn't saying was that I was adopted. But I think adoption is a very visible thing. I don't know if it's treated as in the same way. I mean, at least not in Italy. That's why also what I forgot to say, that we don't have a very developed racial discourse. It's just
Mhm.
raising now. So a lot of the problem with transracial and international adoptees in Italy is that they don't have a really conscious identity, ethnic identity, or even racial identity. Oh, in Europe
Mhm.
we prefer ethnic, but yeah, I think most of the I will say not struggle because I used it too much, but just the conflict comes from that.
Yeah, I think like back in the 90s and 80s, like it was way worse here. We kind of in the adoption industry here, it was pretty much like colorblind, just make the TRA part of your family and don't really focus on their differences, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
we're one of you now. And I feel like adoptive families now, they're a little more developed and talking about race and integrating birth cultures, but there's still, I feel like, a barrier that we haven't really crossed yet, and we're the adult adoptee community here is really kind of trying to take a stand and take the narrative back to adult adoptees versus just adoptive parents. And I noticed because you sent me a link to your blog, I was trying to check it out in a
Yeah.
little bit, and you wrote about like Italian adoptees and giving them a space. And I think that's so important, especially for an adoptee like you who was adopted from the United States. I definitely think that we need to give voices to more people in other countries like Italy and Germany, because the adoptee population is pretty big
Yeah.
and we only hear about certain groups. So, can you tell me a little bit more about your blog and the work you're trying to do for adoptees in this space?
Yeah, so I have two blogs. One is about me and my adoption story, my work, my artworks. And the other one is about giving space and words to the Italian adoptee community. Um, I called it the Italian case because we don't have a national discourse on adoption. Like we're very much fractured and multifaceted. Every group mostly works among its own. And so what I wanted to do with the project, which I called Adopt Cloud, and the project in the specific is Adoption Cloud, was to create that sort of scenario to give to international adoptees, because I was tired of like not seeing Italy in the international discourse. I'm able to listen and to speak pretty fluent, but I'm not like super fluent. But I mean in English, but um, in Italy, we have that sort of like language barrier. And I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to overcome that. And because along with that, along with the barrier, we also have a lot of things to say. I think we have a specific scenario. I think we have stories to tell. And the project is actually, I mean, now I'm on vacation, but it will start in September. I'm hoping to have all the Italian partners just telling their stories, describe their activities, and I'll post them and share it in English, of course. So yeah,
Just reiterating that it's important work that you're doing to giving a platform to other adoptees.
yeah, thank you. I hope it works.
The more voices we get out there, the better that we can um, help fix and make adoption more ethical and get these discussions on ethnic issues and racial problems, and just make people aware, because I feel like the country is so big. We have so many countries involved in adoption, but a lot of the time we're not hearing about all the ins and outs. It's just like the same old story of a child wants a couple, a
Yeah,
family needs a baby needs a home, and then happily ever after. But like discussions like these, we're learning about different aspects of adoption. And I think that's very important.
yeah. And if I can add to that, I think what's very important, that's one of the things I didn't get in US is the importance of nationalities. I mean, US is such a big country; it's kind of like big, like Europe in its own. But instead, Europe is very diverse. Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone has his own little culture, and we are very different. So I think that in the conversation, maybe what's missing, it's that diversity sometimes. Even like just English speakers. Like my dream is to think adoption in multi-language. I mean, Spanish, French, and there are so many groups. I'm
Mm-hmm.
new. I'm not new, but like I'm new to the international discourse as a group. That for
Mm-hmm.
sure. But there are huge groups that I know, like French speaking adoptees, and it would be like so good to have like a global um, discourse on adoption that faces that, because like I think that even as adoptee we have privileges. I mean, sometimes it doesn't it doesn't stick, but there are like Americans versus Australian and New Zealander, versus Europe, and like then there's this Northern Europe and Southern Europe, like, so yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's the future.
I think there are definitely privileges that come with being an adoptee, and I think that's another sector that makes it so complicated,
Mhm.
because we are part of this population that has to deal with initial traumas of being separated from your first family, but then we are oftentimes moved from countries with less privileges and monetary um, things to often countries that are more well off in that area and more stable financially in families, and that can lead to privileges and also complications with guilt, uh, and just like all these unique issues that are tough to navigate. Okay, I'm a little curious, and I'm sure my listeners are probably curious about this. Well, since you were adopted into Italy, did your parents tell you more about that process? Because um, a lot of the times here in America, like couples will go through agencies, and then they'll search for like the country that best suits their needs. But did your parents ever tell you why they chose the United States versus a different country?
Yeah, no, they didn't choose that. I mean, the country. I mean, um, I know that they were like in list for a baby for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like adoption in general can be tough on couples, and maybe like later in life
Yeah.
you discover like that you ended up like in a family that, I mean, in a couple that was already very distressed when you get there. And at first, like the first adoptee can like save the couple, the second can shake it a little bit more. But no, my parents didn't choose US. Um, the 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 way it went, they told me that there was, let's say, the chief program of the between the
Mm-hmm.
two countries. She had the idea because she was of Italian descent. So she had this idea that black babies could be find family easier. I mean, she could find family easier for black babies in Italy. So the Italian adoption agency was contacted by the American one, and they created this
Mm-hmm.
program. Um, so that's how it went. And also the research that I did when I moved back to US kind of equal that. I mean, what my parents told me. I think
Yeah.
the not the problem, but the fact that was in the 90s and there wasn't a lot of legislation made it
Mm-hmm.
easier for me to have documents, all the documents. But not all the adoptees of my group had the same. Um, most of them, uh, and also there were lawyers involved, social workers. What I know is that
Mm-hmm.
there was a fight between black social workers at the time because they didn't want black babies to be adopted like by white families. I
Yes.
don't know where that battle was lost and at what point. Um, I know for sure that for my adoption, like my biological mom, she knew that I was going to Italy. Like she knew that it was an international adoption. And she thought that I was going to get a better life, which kind of sucked when I discovered, because like I had to like cope with the world, like you got a better life, you're fortunate, which doesn't really, I mean, it's okay when you discover it, but you actually fight all your life against those two words, and then like when you had to admit, then in a way you kind of got that gift, that sticks with you, and it
Yeah.
it bothers a lot. And I mean, I'm not so religious. I don't believe in forgiveness. um I'm quite, I like to, I don't remember how the word, but like when you, keep the grudge. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sometimes I try, but when I reconnected with them, I was already 30. So it's like 30 years. Your life could have been so different, and you try to cope with the fact that someone, okay, maybe they wanted you, but they still let you leave a country and be raised with that kind of shock. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, it's hard to deal with, and like I really hate, and I know a lot of adoptees hate the terminology of a better life, because for a lot of us it's not necessarily a better life, it's a different
Yeah,
life.
exactly.
And like better is such a subjective word that I feel like the adoption community doesn't like to talk about, because it wouldn't help with their agenda of adopting more babies out.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful that you shared that with us, and it is hard. I feel like it's so hard for us as adoptees to live up to this
Standard.
stereotype and
Yeah.
reputation. Standard, yeah, there we go. Standard of having a great life when we have to deal with so many complicated emotions and issues and things just because we were adopted into another country. And even just like reuniting with birth family back in our original country, they still a lot of the times have this idea that we chose to give you up for adoption and your life should have been perfect. You don't have any issues. You have all these things and you had this home and whatever. Like I did the right thing. And then we're here
Still
like
depressed.
that doesn't mean it was a perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we still a lot of us have to deal with mental illness
Yeah.
and just stress and trauma, and then it's just like we're stuck between these two kind of families. We're like, well, we wanted to do what was best for you and we wanted what was best for you, and it's just like that it doesn't always work out in a cookie cutter way.
No. No, for
it,
sure.
it it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard that now, like as adults trying to reunite with our birth family, and um And I hope people listening just really hear that, like, your birth mother wanted you to have a better life outside of the United States. And I feel like we should really just sit with that and realize why the United States is adopting black babies and mixed race babies out of the United States when so many couples are looking to adopt babies. Why are we sending people and kids out of the United States when there's over 1 million couples looking to adopt babies right now? Like, we have such a big issue in the adoption industry where we don't like to discuss these things.
It didn't happen just in Italy. I know for sure that there were like other Black Americans and Latinos babies adopted in Belgium and France. The topic isn't very much
Mm-hmm.
studied. When I was in US, I did some research. I know for sure that if you want to look at to an academic, you can look at Peter Salmon, which is one of the few that was able to like just to keep track of them. And I also read other studies, but they weren't very much
Mm-hmm.
cited. And then now I'm not in the US anymore, so I kind of lost track, but I haven't heard. So, I think it still happens, but also the system is very different.
Yes, it does.
In
It does.
Italy, when my adoption and my group of adoption happened, it was through the state. Like the agencies they weren't accredited because that law came after that. It came later, but they were like we had all the
Uh-huh.
papers done. While now the adoption
Mm.
that are happening between Italy and US are totally private. Yeah, that's for sure. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a big problem with the United States is that there's no federal laws that are throughout every single state that have a standard of care and systems that adoptive parents and agencies have to go through. There can be private adoptions just with lawyers and all that stuff. So a lot of it is just not really regulated, and that can lead to issues. And that's why we don't have concrete statistics about how
Yeah.
many adoptions are going out of the United States. And we're better about tracking adoptions in. I know I think it's the CDC website keeps pretty accurate statistics on that because, of course, America is very good about tracking immigrants. So, yeah, so the statistics are better on that. But
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of felt, um, I don't know, but like betrayed. Is it the word? When I moved back, that was like, oh, can you not know
mm,
that sort of feeling? Like, how can you not do research on this? How can you like? But yeah, sometimes I don't know. Sometimes you just need to step back and see because like I don't. I don't want to cite karma, but like things will be known at some point. Things like histories gets discovered. Um, but yeah, I'm still open.
yeah, 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 yeah. And I think you're right. Like, history is kind of putting a little more pressure now on adoption systems, at least here in the United States. There is a lot more I guess oversight by adult adoptees. We're kind of gathering together on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, to create more knowledge about what it is to be a transracial adoptee, and we are trying to educate adoptive parents about what they should be looking into doing for an ethical adoption versus just not so ethical. And I hope that with voices like ours and your program to get more adoptee voices out there on your blog, that we all can work together to kind of improve the systems everywhere, because there definitely needs to be reform, just to help situations like yours and even mine, because like you said, we can feel kind of betrayed by our own countries, for just sending us out instead of figuring out ways to
Fighting instead of fighting.
yes,
To keep up.
exactly, yeah. So is there anything else you want to share, or any advice you would have for adoptive parents or the future generations of adoptees?
I don't know. My advice is just to listen to yourself, take your time and your breaks when you want. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important point, that being an adoptee can consume our everyday life. Like sometimes it could be like the first thing we think about in the morning to the last thing that we think about at night. And um, as adoptees, it's great to be involved in this community and it's great to want to advocate, but we also have to remember to do self care and to take a breather from just having such heavy thoughts all the time, because that can affect us negatively, and we got to take care of ourselves first personally, in order to keep progressing and going through this journey, because like you mentioned, it's lifelong. We're all learning together, and I think it's important how we have more support now with the social media and just the internet, just allowing adoptees like you and me to connect from across the country. It's just lovely, and it was really nice having you on today and speaking with you, and I hope you enjoyed your time with us.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. It was lovely to chat, to have the just the means and the opportunity to share.
I'm so glad that you joined me today. And if you would like to hear more from Adoptee Thoughts, make sure to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you'd like to learn more about me, you can check out my website, adopteethoughts.com. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.